everyone, and welcome to our spring webinar for the National Head Start Association Grow More Good Garden Grant Program. Today we are talking about STEM learning in the garden, and we have a great group here to share with us. I would just want to give you a little bit of background about the program before we launch in. So next slide. First up today, we're going to talk about the STEM learning in the garden. And then we also have two of our grantees who are going to be sharing about their program so that you can learn a little bit more about really getting growing and how to implement all of these things that we're going to talk about today in your garden and then in your center. And then we're going to close with a Q&A. So next slide. Is we have a short introductory video that kind of shares a little bit about what the National Head Start Association, Scott's Miracle-Gro Foundation, and Kids Gardening Partnership is all about. So we'll just show this first clip.
Every child deserves to grow up healthy and strong, to feel empowered to dream big. But not every child is able to feel secure in this world. What if we gave children a safe space where they could let their curiosity grow? What if we could empower them to know where their food comes from, to get outside and get their hands dirty, to plant a seed and watch it grow, and to learn that a little bit of teamwork can really make something come to life? Gardens are improving young lives all across America by giving children the knowledge to grow something greater. The Scott's Miracle-Gro Foundation's partnership with the National Head Start Association will give children the opportunity, maybe even for the first time, to pluck tomatoes and green beans straight from the vine and taste for themselves that learning doesn't just happen in the classroom. Gardens can give families facing food insecurity the right tools and the confidence to make things blossom. When we partner together, we can build a new future for children and their communities. One filled with healthy bodies and minds, where dreams are nurtured just like a garden. And so our work begins. Because wherever gardens grow, hope grows too.
Thank you guys so much for watching that short video. We really like to start off with that video. It was created for the partnership because it really shows just what we're all trying to work towards, and that is getting kids out in nature, out in the garden, and learning and just enjoying themselves. So the partners today for our program are the National Head Start Association, the Scott's Miracle-Gro Foundation, and Kids Gardening. And next slide. And together we are, oh, that slide went faster than I, okay, just a second. Sorry, I'm getting a message up here on the screen about it switching languages. Sorry, Courtney, do you see that message?
No, I don't.
Okay. Just hit cancel on that then. So sorry about that, guys. So my name is Sarah Pounders. I am with Kids Gardening. We are a national nonprofit, and our goal is to teach kids in the garden, to get all kids to have opportunities to garden and learn and play in the garden. Today, we're going to start out with a brief introduction to STEM learning in the garden, and it's going to be myself and my coworker, Noelle Nicholas. And we are going to give you a kind of an overview, give you a few lesson ideas, and then we will follow it up with some programs, just sharing you how they've actually gotten the garden growing. So Noelle, I believe you have the next slide.
Absolutely. I think this one can be pretty quick. All of you are here because you already care about this and, I think believe in the benefits of STEM learning in gardens. They provide such incredible hands-on experiential learning when thinking about just STEM concepts, relevant practical activities, connections to our natural world, to the origins of food and where those foods come from. It's really inspiring for kids. It's colorful, it's engaging. It really inspires them to have that sort of scientific mindset of exploration and excitement and curiosity. And it really is a place of many, many interdisciplinary experiences. So hopefully we'll inspire you to see through that lens a little bit more today.
So what we're really, when we talk about today, as we're specifically focusing on STEM topics, is that we want to make sure that when you do garden, that you are aligning it with your existing goals, because the garden is really meant to be a tool to help you teach all of the things that you're already teaching, rather than in addition to your day that you have to squeeze in among the other things that you already have to get done in the day. So we're going to kind of look at how you can piece that together with your early learning outcomes framework. And you can do it a couple different ways. You can start out by looking at your goals and then trying to find activities and lessons to go along with teaching those goals. Or you can also look at the activities and the garden activities that you want to do, either what's available in your area by season or what kind of gardening space you have available to you. And then you can go back and figure out where they might fit in the goals. So, and usually it's kind of a combination of both things. So when we're looking at those goals, so the kind of the broader domains that we're going to be looking at are really the cognition and looking at mathematics development and scientific reasoning. It's kind of what we're going to focus on today. So next slide. So again, starting on the big picture. So what are you kind of like, on an introductory level, what areas are you trying to target? So first of all, thinking of the garden as a living science lab really can help inspire you and help you get a picture of what you're trying to accomplish with your garden. So I kind of like to break it down by topic so that you can kind of look in the future and what your kids are going to be learning as they go into elementary school, middle school, and high school, and even college and into their careers. You can start planting the seeds for all that learning right now, in an introductory way. So with life science, you're going to be again looking at plant parts, plant needs, life cycles, understanding that plants look like their parents, understanding that plants have adaptations that help them fit into their environment, looking at earth science, looking at the weather and the climate and natural resources, and looking at your soil, looking at the water cycle, all of those things to start really at an early age, beginning to observe them and understand how they all work together. Ecology, environmental science. So looking at plant and animal relationships, and also looking at that biodiversity and how everything works together in the larger environment. This is the time, and this is where a lot of the math comes in, and that's looking at engineering and technology because they're really all related. This is the time when you can do fun things with the kids and look at garden solutions, build garden structures with them, look at things like rain gardens, green roofs, and hydroponics, which seem like they'd be really advanced, but just being able to incorporate those and the kids getting to watch them, that can start right now. And physical science, understanding that plants make their own food. It's something that can start on an introductory level. So next slide. So some of those goals that you are going to target as you look at your lesson plans. So first of all, sensory and exploration and observation is right up there as something that you can do in the garden and with plant-based activities. Looking at science vocabulary. Lots and lots of opportunities for comparing and contrasting. Engaging in experimentation. So your garden is going to provide you a plethora of opportunities to do things like predict and investigate, collect data, to figure out what to do with all of that data. Opportunities for problem solving, and also tons of things, like I mentioned, looking at all those relationships, looking at the natural cycles. It all begins now and lays that groundwork for later learning. And so next slide is on math. So math is so much fun in the garden because it really allows you to do practical hands-on exploration so that you're actually doing math in a way that it is accomplishing something. You are getting to see why it's important to learn math right from the start. obviously counting is and matching and sorting, you kind of see, and we're going to give some examples of how that can work together. Collecting data so that you actually, things that they're excited about, things that are excited about harvesting, and then they get to eat what they harvest, so they figure out how that's connected. There's lots of observation of patterns, lots and lots of opportunities for measurement using both standard and non-standard measurement tools. And of course, the garden is full of all of the basic shapes that they need to learn too. So next slide.
So the garden is full of sensory experiences, and we have a link at the very top bullet there to our guide to really great sensory garden plants that you can include in your garden. But there are plants that engage all of the senses. You have things like lamb's ear, which are really, really soft and great to touch and pretty hardy to children's touching a lot. Things that offer a really strong aroma like mint and basil, things that are colorful and taste delicious like strawberry and stevia, which kids in my garden called sweet leaf. They, as many times as they learn the name, it is forever sweet leaf, but they beg to taste really sugary leaves all the time. Ornamental grasses offer the wind blowing through them and sounds that you can hear. Money plant as well. Sunflowers and zinnias are big and colorful and really engage vision. And so just offering a lot of sensory stimulation out in the garden is so great at this age and is very abundant. Patterns as well. I think that using natural materials is so, again, stimulating for their sensory systems, but can really offer lots of fun and colorful ways to practice pattern making, and fruit and vegetable snacks turn snack time into a learning opportunity if they're ordering their carrot sticks and their strawberries into patterns, and getting really artistic with it. Mandalas is something that I've done with kids young and older, giving them a chance to create a repeating geometric pattern. Big, round, or square pieces of felt are a great background for this, and they can either collect their own materials from the garden to make these, or you can provide them. But working with especially really young kids in thinking through patterns or maybe concentric circles of repeating the same materials in those patterns to create their mandala is visually stimulating and very fun. I've seen a lot of focus with it. And just any of your natural materials, flowers, seeds, leaves, stones, they make really great materials for creating pattern making.
So I wanted to share with you one of my favorite and easy ways to do science and experiments, and obviously it has a math component too, and that is to use seed viewers. So a seed viewer is just using a clear plastic cup, and you can reuse them over and over again. You just wash and reuse. And one long strip of construction paper that you kind of roll up. And then you can just stuff a paper towel right in the middle. And this is something that you can use to do some quick seed experiments. And then you let them pour some water into the paper towel. Unfortunately, I don't have the water here, so it's gonna, the seeds might kind of have a hard time sliding in. But the seeds go right in between the construction paper. Hopefully you can see this, the construction paper and the cup. And then, as you can see from the pictures, when the seeds sprout, it's like having a root view grower. So you can see the roots grow, you can see the seed germinate. And the fun thing about this is that the experiments abound. So the kids can do all sorts of different things. So like you ask them to consider different types of conditions they can grow in, and you might need to give them a few plugs to kind of get them started. I'm like, what would happen if we put this in the refrigerator? Would it grow? Would it not grow? What if we put it in a dark closet? What if we put it outside? What if we put it in a window? Like they can find all different places. They can decide to water the paper towel or not water the paper towel. You can try different types of seeds so you then compare and contrast. And then you have all the opportunities for collecting data. You can measure them, see how fast they grow, write down the number of days it takes them to sprout, and then compare those. So this is just like a really easy way with very inexpensive supplies that you can get some plant experiments growing. And the bean seeds that I traditionally use are just the ones that are found in the dry bean soup aisle at the grocery store. And you can get an assorted pack, or you can just get one type. But this is just a really easy way to get some experiments growing and really let the kids take control of what they're investigating. So next slide. And here is another couple of ideas that, again, fun things to do with math and science. And that is your garden has lots of opportunities for looking at measurement. So the first step is to look at like height, length, width. So whenever you are growing, and especially fast growing plants can really be intriguing for this age of youth. So fast growing plants include things like tomatoes, squash, cucumbers, beans, sunflowers can be a lot of fun. And what I like to do is just use kind of a non-standard measurement of just a string. Hopefully you guys can see this. So you can use the string as a measurement. You stand it up by your plant. And every day that you go out and look at the height, you can just put a little piece of tape wherever how tall it is. So this represents the bottom. So this one always goes to the bottom of the plant. You do need to label bottom and top so you remember which is which when you first get started. And then you put it outside the plant, and every time you measure you kind of put a little marker. You can use just little tabs that you can write on if you want to, or if you have a cloth pen. I just usually use a piece of ribbon. You can also write on the ribbon itself depending on what you're using. So basically this is just their way to visualize how much the plant is growing. And you can look, so some days it'll grow more, some days it'll grow less. And how often you measure will really depend on what type of plant you're growing, because you want it to be enough that they can see the difference between the heights. But at the same time, you want to not so long that it's just, gone too far. So next one up is, in addition to that, you might also want to be looking at and comparing and contrast weights of things in the garden. And you can make your own balance scale to do this. And this little picture here ended up being better than the photograph I took. So I put this in here. This drawing is from the Math in the Garden book. Basically use a plastic coat hanger that has the metal swivel at the top. And you need to get 2 plastic containers. They can be any size really, but you want to make sure that they're the same size so that they are balanced when you put them on there. And then you can see in this picture how you just use 2 strings on either side. You want them to be about the same height, so hold them up beside each other. You might have to work on that a little bit. And you hang them on either side of the hanger. You put a heavy washer right in the middle, and that basically when you put things in, what'll happen is it'll tilt to one way or the other, whichever's heavier. So this is just a fun way, make your own scale, and then kids can see things that are bigger and smaller. You can look at, does it, the width and length of it actually indicate if they're heavier or not? So this is a fun way to do some hands-on comparisons. So next slide. And another plant part math would be to look at the different, there's lots of things you can do with different plant parts. So for instance, leaves make great examples. First off is just to look for shapes. The leaves comes in all different shapes. So you can find some that are more circular. You can find some that are oval. You can find some that are star shaped. This is an English ivy that's in this picture. If you have a sweet gum tree, that those would be star shaped. You can even find some that are heart shaped. If you have like a red bud tree, there's a couple that are heart shaped. So you can actually make little templates of the different shapes and have the kids go out into the garden to see if they can find things that are those shapes. And it doesn't have to be limited to plant parts. You could also do other things that are in your garden and look for them. Next is to think about just area. Maybe not call it about, it's not like you're finding the area, but you're seeing how many blocks you can fit on a leaf. And then you're comparing which ones can hold more blocks than the other. And you can also then order them from smallest to largest. So that's a kind of a sorting activity. So leaves can have all sorts of different math applications. Next slide. And another plant part to look at are seeds. So seeds, large seeds are really great for young children. Some of the large seeds you might want to use are things like acorns, bean seeds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. Those are just some that you probably have easily accessible to you, but there's lots more out there. And you can do things like how many seeds can you fit in a shape? So this picture here is of a cat, and how many seeds does it take to follow the outline of the cat? Or you could combine seeds and leaves, and how many seeds can you fit on a leaf? You can also, once again, order this from smallest to largest or largest to smallest. Ice cubes are one of the tools I love having on hand for any kind of sorting activity. You can also use things like egg cartons, but I just like ice cube trays because they're easy to wash and reuse over and over again. Next slide. And another fun plant part, the kids love to play with our flowers. And flowers can be used as a counting tool. You can pull off the petals and see how many petals each one has and compare and contrast. You can also sort them by all different characteristics, by kind or color or size. And here are a couple of charts that have been developed to kind of graph those results and different types of attributes that you can compare and contrast. Now, I will say that the one thing about flowers is that you also want to leave the flowers because you want to attract pollinators. So this is something that you may or may not want to do depending on how many flowers you have out in the garden, because you also want to protect those flowers too along the way. So next slide.
So thinking about tools, Sarah mentioned loving to have ice cube trays on hand. There are a lot of things similar to that that are great to just have on hand when you're letting kids out into the garden for free explore time, that lend themselves to scientific inquiry, but also a lot of things that will be the supplies you need for a whole host of activities. Definitely keeping journals or clipboards and writing instruments help them to draw, to engage, to for you to be showing them how to chart different things and to take tallies of observations. So many different applications. Magnifying glasses are a huge hit. I get requested all the time to grab a magnifying glass at a recess visit or after school, and there's just so much inquiry that goes on with kids when they're using their magnifying glasses to look at either small creatures or look closely at the soil, look closely at the inside of a flower. It's really incredible. String, lots of applications. Measuring for sure, like Sarah mentioned. Also, if you're gridding something and doing something like a square foot gardening project, or you know, there's so many things. Blocks for measurements, for area, for building, all sorts of great uses there. Small buckets are really great for transporting or collecting. They can also be a really great way to limit the amount of water that you're giving kids when they are watering the plants, because watering is probably the most popular activity in a garden, especially with littles, and they are still getting used to watering slowly, watering at the base of the plant rather than just dumping the whole thing and coming back for more because it's so sensory and fun. So having lots of small buckets that you can fill up just enough if you know you've got someone who's really into the transporting and the repeating of the activity, you can give them just a little bit over and over so that plant doesn't suffer. Ice cube trays and egg cartons are so great for sorting and collecting, and even creating patterns in them. Like we mentioned patterns, you can have them use those separate containers to create patterns with what they collect. Egg cartons are also very useful for sending little things home, like cutting them into pieces and popping a seed ball in them if you're giving seed balls to take home, or having kids practice planting just one single seed for a seed starter. They're really eco-friendly if they're the paper type, and can be used for all sorts of things. And kid-friendly trowels, you want to give them something that can fit in their hand and that they can use to investigate under the soil, to help with planting, to transport things with you. So these are just some great tools to have on hand. And we have some additional support resources as well. Sarah, I feel like I've missed my pumpkin slide. I don't know where it is.
I do not know where the pumpkin slide was either.
Folks, I'm going to just back up a little bit to see if I can find, aha! We missed one slide. Apologies about that, but it's the slide I'm most passionate about. So let me back us up just a minute before we get to those additional resources. Pumpkins are one of our favorite materials, and in late October, early November, they are everywhere. They are affordable. You probably have them on hand and don't know what to do with them. So besides tossing them, there are so many really great ways to use these as an abundant resource for your STEM learning. You can open them up and have kids touch the inside for that sensory, gooey, fun experience, respecting them if that's a sensory experience that they don't enjoy, of course. But having them count the seeds, having them taste those seeds if you are able to roast them up and enjoy them together, a really nutritious snack. Conducting sink and float experiments, having them guess if this big pumpkin is going to sink or float. They always float. And it can be really surprising for kids. But if they were to, scrape out the inside and fill them with water, there is a point at which so much water on the inside of a scooped out pumpkin might have it sink to the bottom. So it's a really fun way to think about density together. Measuring pumpkins with string, ordering them by size, weighing them to see if bigger means heavier and smaller means less heavy. Watching it rot when that time comes too, seeing how all of those small microbes decompose a pumpkin is really great. Or even leaving it outside and checking it every once in a while to see if some bigger decomposers that might be eating that pumpkin are around, to think about that biodiversity and those relationships as well. And this photo is from a program that we highlighted that has a November pumpkin smash every year. They have folks bring their pumpkins from home. They all smash them into bits together and throw them into their compost and let them become a really great free material for garden compost for the rest of the year. So just some ideas for your pumpkins. And finally, we've got some additional support resources for you. We have created an updated Gardening with Kids Basics seasonal gardening toolkit, which is full of ideas that are organized by the season that you're in, with lots of ideas for you for more specific activity write-ups and plants that you can incorporate every season. And we also have the Gardening with Kids Basics Academy course. So if you're getting started, if gardening is very new to you, this can be a really great way to feel prepared to move forward and start a garden and be engaging your kids. Anything more, Sarah?
No, I think that's it. And we'll send links to all of this information in the follow-up email. So next up, we are going to ask one of our wonderful grantees to come and tell us all about their program and their process. So we'll call up Jameith and Pamela to share information about how they got their garden growing. Oh, I think you guys are still on mute, maybe?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Hi, I'm Jameith Stansfield. I am the Assistant Director of our Education and Operations Department for Harris County Department of Education Head Start.
Hi, and I am Pamela Jones-Lee, and I am the Education and Special Services Manager for our agency.
So the project that we received the grant for was for our Tidwell Head Start, Early Head Start and Head Start location. A lot of our campuses have gardens already, but this location did not have one. And so what we did was, if you go to the next slide, please. So here's our location that we put the garden at. And then if you go to the next slide, please. So we used the funds so that we could transform the front part, which is the part you were looking at, off to the right, is a big area that is open and wide with nothing in it. And so we felt like it would be wonderful for students to enter the building and be able to look and see the gardens with their families. And so we took that space and we put 3 8-foot by 8-foot cedar raised garden beds there. We used the money to purchase the fruits and vegetables that we planted, and then the other materials that, like the hand rakes, the little hand rakes and stuff that children need, the gloves, the aprons, the dirt, so that we could have the garden set up. I'm going to go to the next slide.
I'm sorry, someone was trying to come in. Okay, so what we do is we want to make sure that everyone is well versed and knowledgeable about our gardening program. So what we do, we start with our staff. So we make sure that our staff are well versed and trained in our gardening curriculum because we feel it's important that our staff understand the concept and terminologies associated with the gardening process. They have to understand the real why behind teaching the gardening process. This way, they can make sure that our students are provided with a life-changing experience so that they can take that experience with them for the rest of their lives. Because if students can remember everything that happens like with the process of gardening, then they'll understand like, okay, when I get this, this is what happened. It started off as a seed. So when the seed once it's planted, oh, it grows into this. Oh, then you have to go and get it. And then once you get it, then you have to go through this process before it comes onto my dinner plate. So we make sure that our teachers understand that whole process so that when they do have that experience with the children, they can have it and they can be really engaging with that process. And then that also helps them to give the students more autonomy in that process. So then that helps them to give students jobs, and then they're able to rotate those jobs out and give the children more responsibility in that whole process. So you have the students that are able to pull weeds. You have the students that are able to water the garden. That way the students are able to be hands-on in that process. And then also we want our parents to be hands-on in the process. And during home visits and parent-teacher conferences, we encourage our parents, come volunteer. A lot of parents, they are very knowledgeable about gardening. And then I'm going to share a little bit about one of our parents with the Tidwell Garden that was very, very knowledgeable about the gardening process. So if you can go on to the next slide. So the Tidwell Garden project, we started off with the kickoff event where we invited families and students and staff. We planted the seeds. We started off with the planter. The planters were placed in the gardening area. So we put the soil down. One of the families, our policy council family actually, um, they helped with plotting out like how a lot of the layout would happen. They were big gardeners. And so they helped with a lot of the layout of how everything would go. And they were really, really hands-on with how no, you gotta make sure this kind of soil is there. Y'all make sure this kind of soil. They were really, really hands-on in that process. And so that really helps when you have that level of engagement from families with the whole process. So that was something everyone, you'll see some pictures later on, but everyone was really, really hands-on with that process, with getting everything planted. And then the students came in and they were able to take part in getting the first seeds planted into the gardening boxes. From the kickoff event, we were able to do a harvest festival. So once the seeds started to grow, students were able to take those first harvests, and they were able to do classroom activities each day, where they were able to do different things. So they may count how many seeds are in this plant. They may do something where they may have made some kind of little arts activities, where they maybe did some kind of painting with the different seeds, or with the different vegetables that they had, or maybe they did some kind of predicting or something. But they made sure each day during the week they did something related to the crops that were produced. From there, we moved on and we had our parent-child food science fair in February. And so each student is assigned a fruit or a vegetable. and they're able to work with their families at home, and they're able to learn 3 interesting facts about their own particular fruit or vegetable. They're able to create posters and their own dish, and then they're able to enter into a competition on their campus. And then they have judges, and then the judges decide on who has the best dish, um, and the most healthiest dish, because we don't just look at what's the best tasting. We want to make sure it's healthy. So they look at what's the most healthiest dish, and then the winners, the first place winners on each campus, they come to our policy council event in February, and then we have judges that will vote on what's the best dish for preschool, infant, and toddler. And then we have our first, second, and third place winners. And then they are crowned, they get plaques and they get certificates. And again, we look at the appearance of the dish, the healthiness of the dish, and then the interesting facts that they learned about their dishes as well. Next slide, please. Okay, now with the implementation of the gardening program, there are some obstacles we face. We do face staff turnover. Sometimes you think you have some things in place, but sometimes when things fall out of place, people fall out of place, those things can affect things. And it causes us to have to do something a little different, or it may delay the process of how things go. But we bounce back, and we're able to overcome those challenges. But turnover is something that affects those things. Next.
So the impact that we were able to find with our gardens is that students were absolutely fascinated about what they were growing in the gardens and how it would, how they saw it. What's the word I'm looking for? It looked different. It went from a seed, and then you start to see the sprouts, and then you actually start to see the little buds coming on, on the plant itself, and then it turns into a bigger vegetable or fruit. They were also more interested in eating the fruits and vegetables during meal times. And discussion, a lot more discussion and language about healthy eating. That was evidenced in during center time when they would go to dramatic play. You see them acting out, the cooking at the dramatic play center with healthy foods. The events that we had, the community was absolutely excited to be involved. They would donate things to the campus. They really liked being a part of the Parent-Child Food Science Fair for the center, so they volunteered. Community partners, like businesses, volunteered to be judges and do the tasting and pick the first, second, and third place winners for each group. We did it by early Head Start, and then we had Head Start because, their levels are a little different. And so there was absolutely no cooking for early Head Start, but we had cooking for the Head Start. And so we had winners for both groups. So first, second, and third place for early Head Start, first, second, and third place for Head Start at each, campus. And then facilities were excited, families were excited to do the cooking with their child and having to take pictures of each step along the way. And they were all very proud of what they did at home and what they were going to present at school. And so overall, we found that the students were proud of their garden. They took care of it. They noticed when it was weeds in the garden, and so they were worried about it when it rained. And so that was something it was a positive impact. You can go to the next slide. Sorry. So here's some pictures of our event. You'll see staff. Shervon is on one of the pictures. She's on this call. You'll see staff. You see the parents. What's beautiful is, we have a father initiative, but this brought out a lot of fathers too. And so we were very happy. Not that we're not happy about the moms, but we were very happy to have so much father participation. You can go to the next slide. And then you see the kids participating in actually planting. They went from the buckets to the actual garden beds, and so they were extremely happy. You can go to the next slide. Same thing. Just you're seeing, how busy, involved, and engaged everybody is. You can go to the next slide. So here, this was actually our parent-child food science fair. So, no, this is Harvest Festival, probably mixed with parent-child food science fair, but this was Harvest Festival where they're getting to taste stuff from their garden. So this is our early Head Start classroom number 1. If you go to the next one, this is from the Parent-Child Food Science Fair, and so you could see how they did the poster. They had to do pictures. They had to not only create a healthy dish, but they had to give it a creative name. So they were very interesting. This is our early Head Start classroom number 2, which is, toddler age. You can go to the next one. This is our Harvest Festival, and this is Early Head Start, our classroom 3, so they're a little bit older in this classroom. See how engaged and focused they are on the foods. You can go to the next one. This is our last Early Head Start classroom where they're getting ready to go to the pre-K classroom. And this is, they're doing an activity during Harvest Festival during snack time. And then you can go to the next one. This is our Head Start side, and they are also doing an activity during snack time. Look at those smiles. And then if you go to the next one, this is this will be our last Head Start classroom. At this location, we have 4 classrooms that are early Head Start and 2 that are Head Start. And so this is our last. Now, the one that's priceless to me is the bottom left corner. I don't think, he's sure if he likes that or not. But this is our Head Start, our second Head Start classroom. And then that is it. Does anybody have any questions for us?
I think we're going to hold off on questions right now, and we'll do those at the end. So we will thank you guys so much, and we'll bring up. So hold on, and we'll do questions at the end, and you guys can put them in the chat. So JJ will bring you up so that you can share about the Rooted Hearts Garden as part of the Community Action Program of Western Indiana Head Start. I think you're still on mute, JJ.
Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. Our Rooted Hearts Garden started about a year ago. My center manager at the time and we wrote the grant together, and it was really exciting to see all the things that come from the gardens that we've been talking about. So we are as part of Community Action of Western Indiana. We are on the Indiana-Illinois border. So we have had snow yesterday. Today it's very cold. Last Thursday, I think it was 70. So we're juggling temperatures probably like the rest of you are. So the next slide, please. We have, as you can see, this beautiful grass at the edge of our fenced playground. And the way that it really got started was we had been looking for field trips for the fall to take children to pick out a pumpkin to purchase. And we had to travel a ways to do that. But then for every child, it was like $7 or $8 to purchase a pumpkin and be a part of the field trip. Well, sometimes we get donors, but that was quite a fee for 48 children. So I had suggested we could plant our own pumpkin seeds and then see what we come back to in the fall. And then we'd have that fun process as well. And then we just kept talking as a staff, and then we could make a garden and we could have Have you been able to hear anything? Okay, okay.
Yes, it just cut out just a minute, just as
Okay.
we said so.
Okay, so we thought what a better way to utilize the space than plant our garden beds. We got some estimates and we were able to get the fence 28 by 46 square foot area. And it's a huge garden. We have 9 garden beds, 4 3 by 9, I believe, and 5 that are about 4 by 4. So next slide, please. So we started with wood, our hammers, our nails. With the help of some community friends, former families, 9 beds were put together. So you can kind of get an idea of the size and the space that we had to work with there. Next slide, please. And then I believe the gentleman in the orange shirt, I wasn't here on this particular day, but he was the mastermind behind the garden beds, as he's from the Purdue Extension office in our town. We're lucky to have a good relationship with him. He works out of Purdue University, and he's also tied with our 4-H program. So we get to work closely with him in his extension office. Next slide, please. And then after the beds were built, we lined them with the landscape lining and added the soil, and it was a lot of soil. It was trucked in. So next slide, please. And then John from the Purdue Extension office, Miss Kim, she's our parent resource coordinator at Head Start, a previous Head Start family, the Paynes. So you can see how proud that we all are with our work. Next slide, please. And then here came the dirt, and there was a lot of dirt, and we enlisted the help of other Head Start centers that we work closely with. Next slide, please. And then just a thank you for the hard work and the dedication. The men that you see in this slide, they are from our weatherization crew. So they were a great help to have some muscle. So next slide, please. And yes, they were from the housing weatherization. So you can see in the left slide, all the mulch that had to be spread around after the beds were filled with the dirt. So next slide, please. And then we also had our child adult resource services come to help. Actually, they contacted us and said, we'd like to come and help. What can we do? So they were great help and support. Next slide, please. And then again, we enlisted the help, like I said earlier, with our other Head Start centers that we work very closely with. Next slide. And thanking our other friends from Park County Head Start, North Vermilion Head Start, and Montgomery County Head Start. And as you see in the center, we have already found some living things. And the next slide. So the process took a little longer, which delayed our ability to plant. So our program ended in May. So we left for summer break. So when we came back, everything was ready to go. So I'm sorry, our parent resource coordinator, she had the idea of bringing in the wood slab. So she had, as you can see in the center where the children are sitting, a large trunk slab, and then it's sitting on a small slab, and then there are 4 or 5 little stumps to sit on around that. And that's really fun for taking library books out or magnifying glasses, that kind of thing. And we have found some great little ant habitats in that stump. So next slide, please. As I said, we have been using it to read. We're getting our own library box that someone's building for us, filled with books about gardening and plants. Next slide, please. And there's just a great picture of them looking at their books and having discussions. Next slide, please. In November of last year, we dedicated a garden bed to a student that we had had for 2 years. Her name was Heavenly Dream, and she passed away in August. So we honored her with a purple garden bed. And as you can see, we added wind chimes and mums and a plaque. We chose mums because as being perennials, they keep coming back year after year, and I'm already noticing the little starts on them for this year. And last week we had a nice 70-degree day, so the children in my class, we planted some wildflower seeds around that bed. So hopefully in a few weeks we'll start seeing their little sprouts. We just want to keep adding to that bed. Next slide, please. And those are her parents. Next slide, please. But our like I said, the project's been put on hold for the cold weather. We will begin in March. Purchasing plant warmers and starting seeds in our classroom. We're actually on spring break right now, so we'll be doing that when we get back. And as I mentioned about John from the Purdue Extension, he's going to help us begin the process using it doesn't mention here, but we're going to be using a greenhouse that he's going to construct for us as well over one of the garden beds. So we're inviting families to join us. So it's just been a really great experience so far. Next slide, please. After the seedlings are grown and the weather warms, we will transfer the plants to the beds and watch them grow. Again, we'll invite all of our families to help with this process. Next slide, please. And here is the, it's a hoop house, I'm sorry, that I mentioned earlier, rather than a greenhouse, but it's pretty exciting. So he's going to help us create this hoop house, and it'll protect the plants from the harsh weather, and we'll use materials obtained by our families so they can get these ideas to use at home as well. Next slide, please. Are there any questions? I was asked to speak about math and science. Would you still like me to do that?
Let's see if we have any questions first
Okay.
that are in the side here. I'm trying to look through. I'm having a hard time finding the Q&A area.
The Q&A is all in the chat, and
Okay.
if you could make some recommendations for folks living in like north central Minnesota or anywhere where that climate isn't as warm or their growing season is much shorter, that would be greatly appreciated.
All right, JJ, that might be you. Do you have any examples? Because you definitely do. You guys finish up in May at the end of the
Yes.
school year. So
Yes.
what are your plans? I know you had that picture of adding the protective barrier, but do you have some plant recommendations of things that you can squeeze into your growing season?
He had mentioned some plants. I'm so sorry. He had mentioned some plants that are a little bit hardier, and I don't know, we briefly spoke of those and I can't remember. I would just say to possibly start them off like you saw earlier in our slides in the cubs, and then possibly transfer them into a bigger pot or a tote or something that you can carry back inside when the weather gets a little rough until you're ready to harvest.
There are also some plants that have very short growing seasons. So salad crops are a lot of times fall into that category, like lettuce and radishes take from 30 days from the time you plant the seed till it's ready to harvest. Lettuce, especially if you get loose leaf lettuce, you can start picking it when it's really small, and the kids can enjoy it when it's pretty small. And kale, There's a couple things. Sugar snap peas actually go in really early in the season. They can handle some cold weathers, and
He did
kids
mention
love,
those. Yeah.
yeah, kids love sugar. I love sugar snap peas too, but they make a fun crop that can turn around pretty quickly. So yeah, and then also to look at fall harvest, you might be thinking about, and there's some programs that actually look for crops that can grow all summer and then they'll be ready to harvest
Mhm.
in the fall is another way. Kind of think about if you have families or staff that might be able to, or volunteers in your community that might be able to come in a couple times a week during the summer just to check on things if you have that
Yeah,
accessible.
that's exactly what we're doing. Yes.
So you guys are going to plant over the summer and then
Yes. Yes, we'll plant before we leave and then have a list of volunteers and maybe a rotation system and we can just take turns coming in to check on them. And it's our hope that when we pick a tomato, a child that wouldn't actually normally try a tomato will eat the tomato he grew. So that's our one of our hopes.
and I see a question came in about stevia too. I Noel, did you want to they were asking about how to use the stevia leaves. So you mentioned that your kids really enjoy eating them.
Absolutely. They are just fun fact, uh, about 500 times sweeter than sugar, the leaves themselves. And they are the leaves that are used to distill into products like Splenda, things made with stevia as a sugar alternative. I really like to use them to do quick lemonades with kids. I'm in California and we have both a mature lemon and lime tree, but you can get them from the store too. And sort of macerate them with the stevia leaves and mix it all in, and it gives it this really sweet but herbal flavor. But kids just love to grab them and chew on them, or combine them. I've done combinations with like a slice of strawberry and a stevia leaf and have them nibble on those. Combining the stevia like you would maybe with mint in like a watermelon salad sort of thing. But I really like using it to sweeten drinks. And I've heard of people making simple popsicles with them. Like if you were to sort of macerate them and boil them with some water and just freeze that water into a kind of a stevia popsicle, or put fruit pieces in them. But I've never tried that myself, so I don't have tips on exactly how many leaves you'd need. They're very, very strong, but the plant is perennial and it just keeps growing. And it's it's very leafy. The whole entire branch of the plant is covered in leaves, so it usually produces offshoots and has plenty of leaves, kind of like a mint, I'd say, for as many as they get picked. By the next week when they come back, they're covered with leaves again. So I really love it. But that said, I'm not sure how they operate in seasonal climates where it does get really cold. I'm in California and we never have frost where I am. So they've done well there, but they do slow down even with our very mild winter in the winter and get really abundant in the warmer months. Yeah.
Well, and I see we had another question about planting inside the classroom. And Jamise, if you are still on, I saw you mentioned the idea of growing indoors in air garden. Is Jamise still on? Would you like to? I don't know if that's something one of your programs does, and you'd like to share a little bit about that.
Yes, we've had centers request because like if they're in a partnership, like we have some centers, of course y'all know this, that are standalone and some that are like on a school, ISD campus, and they might not have the space to devote to an actual garden outside. So they have purchased the Aero Gardens, and it's like a really cool, fancy little kit where it comes with the appropriate seeds that fit in that container, and you can grow in the Aero Garden all year. And so you can also, it'll grow and you can pick it and harvest it just like you would in a regular garden. It has a similar look and feel as the cup idea that was shared earlier by using the cup so it's clear and you can see. With the Aero Garden, you can see everything as it's happening. Because you don't have, like, some of the stuff didn't have all the dirt that it would in a bed. It just depends on what you pick to grow. The kids obviously like that because they're inside, and then they want to touch it all day, and so it produces the same results that the garden produces as response to children and families.
Yeah, so that's a great option for those of you in those northern climates. And those, again, are just, and the plants grow really quickly. So it's great for young kids because they get to see that immediate, that really fast growth. So I know we're at time for today, so we've got to wrap this up, but we are definitely open. If you have any questions, to emailing us. We will have a follow-up email where we share out these resources. We want to thank our programs again so much for sharing your experience with us, and thank all of you for joining us today. And we hope to see you again soon. We will have another garden story time coming up. And like I said, look out for that email for more information to come. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.